Welcome to Adulting with Joyce Pring. Watch the full video of this episode on my channel, www.youtube.com/JoycePringTV. And if you want to level up your adulting game, check out joycepring.com/collections for my digital products and courses. We can talk about self-reflection and self-growth on your podcast and on your YouTube, on your channels. I want to ask for a lot of the young people who are listening to the podcast right now, what were some of the exercises and the practices that you often did during this time of figuring out that really helped you? And what were the resources and the encouragements that you did and you got that helped you become the person that you are now?
There's so many, and my channel is all about sharing those resources. But I would say the most important ones are journaling constantly. So if you can journal every single day, great. But if you can't, it's okay, as often as you can. And journaling for me is just, I just stream of consciousness journaling, which just means whatever's in my brain, I try to write it down on paper. And that's how I understand what my brain is thinking and how I'm truly feeling inside. I think the goal is to get to the core of your inner voice, because everybody has a true inner voice that is the authentic version of you. And that version knows exactly what you really want. It knows exactly what next steps to take without, I'm talking about without the external opinions that everybody else is saying. Because most of the time our judgment is so clouded by what everyone else is saying and what society is telling us. So you want to try to connect closer to your inner voice. That's what's really important. I love doing a lot of different reflections. Like I would do, and I still do this, like at the end of every month, I write down the highlights of my month, what I've learned, what I'm grateful for, how I'm growing. And I think it's good to check in with yourself, whether it's monthly or quarterly, because if you don't check in with yourself, you're not going to be aware of your progress. So I think it's always good to have some sort of consistent check-in progress. And then an exercise that I will share that's from my Artist of Life workbook, which is my product, is something called Current Me and Future Me. So it just, on 2 pages, you basically draw on one side your current self, and you draw, like I literally just draw myself as I am, what I'm wearing. And then around that drawing of you, you write down your feelings, what you're going through in life, what you're thinking, just everything. And you just kind of like draw a picture of your current self. And then on the other page, you draw your ideal future self. And this could be a future self like in 3 years or 5 or 10 years later. And you just envision who you want to be. I would literally like find an inspiration, like a really cute outfit and a cute hairstyle. I'll draw myself as I imagine my ideal self to be. And then I will write all the things that I want that ideal self to be living. Like, how does she feel? What is she doing? How does she spend her time? Just all the details, right? And so drawing it out visually like that really helps you see, okay, well, here's where I am. Here's where I want to be. And then, okay, what can I do to bridge that gap? So that's something that I do at least once a year, every single year for the past over 10 years at this point. And it's funny because if you go back to the first one I ever did in like 2012, like the current me was so depressed and in such a dark place, right? She was like struggling really hard at life. And then each year, like the current self becomes better and better, and it becomes closer and closer to the ideal future self. And so it shows that you're actually making progress. And it's really nice to have something visual that you can see.
And I like that idea of taking into account the kind of person that you are and then the kind of person that you want to become, because it also gives you the perspective that sometimes life is just seasons. Like you go through difficult seasons of maybe going through depression and not knowing what your next step is. And then the next year, life is so different where
exactly
all of a sudden everything's so much better. And then sometimes it would go bad again. But when you go back to the bad season, you have something visual to look at and say, look, I went from something bad and then became something good. So maybe from this bad season, I can get something good again and become a better person. And, sometimes so I put out these podcast episodes, and some of the negative comments that I would get would be like, but not everybody has the time to do that. But I think the difference of people who are actually living a life that they love and people who don't is that they carve out time for these things. Like you have to carve out time for inner reflection and to think about who you are and who you want to become. Because if you don't do that basic foundational thing, then it's kind of hard to make decisions on the other big stuff, right?
Exactly. You have to have awareness for where you are and what you want to work on. If you don't have that, like I know people who don't journal and they spend years not recognizing the issues and they just keep, when you just keep coasting about life, not saying it's bad, but I would just say it takes much longer to make changes if you're not being aware, right?
That's it for this episode of Adulting with Joyce Pring. If you liked this podcast, please don't forget to use the hashtag Adulting with Joyce Pring and also check out www.joycepring.com for the show notes and tag me on social media with at Joyce Pring. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Paalam!